Around the world, there are many captivating empty locations ranging from old gold rush towns and neglected islands to amusement parks left to decay. We've searched the planet to discover the most interesting and eeriest abandoned places. Spinalong Greece. This deserted island in the northeast of Crete has a very old and turbulent past. First, it was taken over by the Venetians, who back in the 1500s constructed a protective fort on this island. But in 1715, the Ottomans took control of the island, and it wasn't until the early 20th century that the last Turkish occupants departed. Today, the remains of the fortresses and the massive protective walls are some of the main attractions on the island. Starting in approximately 1904, the island underwent a significant transformation in its purpose. It became a place designated for individuals afflicted with leprosy, and hundreds of people with the disease were exiled to this location.
And this little island behind me, Spinalonga, which for 50 years was a place where people with an incurable disease of leprosy were sent.
This leper colony continued to function until 1957, when the government eventually decided to shut it down. Nowadays, the archaeological site attracts a substantial number of tourists who take boat rides from the town of Plaka to explore the captivating history of the island. Old Idaho State Penitentiary, Idaho, USA. The unsettling Old Idaho State Penitentiary is situated on the eastern outskirts of Boise, the capital of Idaho. Established in 1872, it served as a functioning prison for over a century. Throughout its history, the institution incarcerated infamous criminals, including Harry Orchard, who was found guilty of the assassination of former Idaho Governor Frank Steunenberg.
It was decided by us that I would come down to Idaho and try to assassinate ex-Governor Steunenberg.
However, in 1973, the penitentiary was ultimately closed. By that time, the prison had become outdated and ill-suited for its intended purpose, plagued by unsanitary water systems and issues of overcrowding. Inmates were relocated and the facility was sealed off. Present-day tours typically lead visitors through the premises, unveiling the eerie ambience of the echoing cell blocks, the chilling solitary confinement area, and even the solemn gallows. Jazat alhamra, United Arab Emirates. Jazat alhamra, now a desolate ghost town near Ras Al Khaimah in the UAE, was once a bustling pearl fishing village, teeming with thousands of inhabitants. However, in 1968, the town was entirely deserted. It's believed that as the Value of Pearls declined, many of Jazat al-Hamra's residents departed in search of better prospects in major cities like Abu Dhabi. There are also reports suggesting that tribal conflicts may have driven people away. Today, the town's structures, many of which were constructed using coral, stand dilapidated and covered in dust, bearing witness to its bygone glory. Jazat al-Hamra is steeped in spine-tingling ghost stories, adding to its mystique. Tourists typically have the freedom to explore the site, witnessing the deteriorating houses and the ruins of its mosque. Once a year, former residents return to Jazat al-Hamra for an annual reunion party, rekindling connections with their hauntingly abandoned past. Tonka Castle, Missouri, USA. These captivating remnants belong to Tonka Castle, an extravagant European-style mansion envisioned by businessman Robert Snyder. Inspired by the enchanting fortresses found overseas, Snyder initiated the construction of this grand edifice in 1905. Unfortunately, his life was tragically cut short in one of the state's earliest automobile accidents in 1906, and he never had the opportunity to witness Tonka Castle in all its splendor.
And his name was Robert McClure Snyder. He was a wealthy Kansas City businessman. He first visited the area in June of 1902. Fell in love with it, came back, purchased 5,000 acres of the surrounding area, and decided to build a self-functioning estate. And unfortunately, construction began in 1905, but unfortunately he was killed in one of Missouri's first automobile accidents in Kansas City.
Snyder's sons, however, were determined to honor their father's dream, and they saw to it that the castle was completed by the 1920s. It subsequently served as a private residence for one of the sons and also operated as a hotel. Nevertheless, a devastating fire ravaged the property in the 1940s, leaving it abandoned. Today, the castle's remains are safeguarded by the state, allowing visitors to independently explore the haunting ruins on a hike. Colemans Cop, Namibia. Colemans Cop, an evocative ghost town in the heart of the Namib Desert, has succumbed to the relentless advance of desert sands. In 1908, the town's history was set in motion when a railway worker named Zacharias Lawala stumbled upon an intriguing stone in the area. This seemingly ordinary stone turned out to be a diamond, leading to the discovery of rich deposits of this precious mineral. As fortune seekers flocked to the region in search of their own riches, the town of Colemans Cop was born. During its heyday, Colemans Cop prospered as an affluent town, boasting opulent houses, a hospital, and even a performance hall. However, by the 1930s, the diamond deposits were dwindling, and rumours of more abundant reserves to the south lured residents away. By 1956, Colemans Cop's once thriving community had vanished, leaving the town to the mercy of decay and encroaching sands. Typically, guided tours are available for tourists, offering a glimpse into the captivating and sand-swathed structures of this forsaken town. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Kentucky, USA. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium, located in Louisville, Kentucky, proudly claims to be one of the most haunted places on Earth.
The most haunted places on Earth.
That's right. You've heard of it. Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
This striking Tudor Gothic Revival-style edifice was completed in the 1920s with the capacity to house over 400 tuberculosis patients at once. By 1961, Waverly Hills Sanatorium had shuttered its doors, as a treatment for tuberculosis had been developed, rendering the facility obsolete. Subsequently, it served as an elderly care center for a couple of decades before being permanently closed in 1981. Since then, the sanatorium has remained abandoned, except for the occasional guided tours, paranormal investigations, and special events held during Christmas and Halloween. Canfranc International Railway Station, Spain. This majestic station building is nestled high in the Pyrenees, straddling the border between Spain and France. It once held a position of great importance as one of Europe's key railway hubs, but has remained abandoned since the 1970s. In 1928, the station was inaugurated with great fanfare, featuring the presence of Spanish royalty and the President of France. Throughout its operational history, the station played a pivotal role in significant historical events. It served as a gateway to freedom for many Jews persecuted by the Nazi regime during World War II. However, the Nazis eventually took control of the station, and it's believed that they also utilized it for smuggling gold. Despite its disuse, the abandoned station continues to attract tourists with its breathtaking mountainous surroundings and rich historical significance. Guided tours are typically available, and plans for the restoration of the structure are underway. Hashima Island, Japan. Also known as Battleship Island because of its distinctive shape, Hashima, off the coast of Nagasaki, was once the site of an important undersea coal mine. Among the most densely populated places on the planet in its heyday, the island was home to thousands of miners through the 1940s and 1950s. It's also reported that many of these people were forced laborers brought over from Korea. Inevitably, the island's undersea coal stores became depleted, and the mine on the Hashima closed in the 1970s. Since then, the high-rise apartment blocks built to accommodate the huge volume of workers and the mining buildings have been left to moulder. Tours generally go out to visit the eerie island, with guides chronicling its dark history. The island also made an appearance in 2012 James Bond blockbuster Skyfall. Banak, Montana, USA. A wonderfully preserved western ghost town, Banak began life in 1862 when gold was discovered by prospector John White. Men hoping to make their fortune poured in from all over the country, and Banak boomed. Mining activity continued right up until the 1930s, but by the 1950s the gold reserves had been all but depleted, and Banak's final residents moved on. Today, Banak is protected as a state park, and there are more than 60 historical structures remaining. Visitors are typically able to explore the ghost town on an independent tour, and creepy ghost walks are usually organized in October. Haunting highlights include the courthouse, drugstore, saloon, and schoolhouse. City Hall Subway Station, New York, USA. This stunning subway station is a New York City attraction that's often missed by tourists and locals alike. It was opened in 1904, making it the first subway station in the Big Apple, and it was operational for around 4 decades. However, the station was not adapted to more modern train cars and was ultimately shut down in 1945. Although the station remains obsolete, its eye-catching architectural features typically attract tourists all the same. The vaulted ceilings, coloured tiles, skylights and chandeliers mean the space is worlds away from the dreary subway stations of the modern day. Guided tours are usually run by the New York Transit Museum. Ross Island, India. Ross Island, part of India's Andaman archipelago, was taken over by British colonists in the 1850s. They initially used the land as a penal colony for Indian rebels, but soon changed their plans. The prisoners were moved elsewhere, and the British made beautiful Ross Island into their administrative headquarters. The isle was transformed into a grand base for British officers, complete with lavish homes, a church, and luxuries such as ballrooms and tennis courts. Finally, in 1938, it was ordered that any remaining prisoners be released, and in 1947, India gained independence. This meant that Mother Nature had her way with the island, with the crumbling ruins of houses and public buildings consumed by greenery. To explore, tourists can typically take the short boat ride from Port Blair. La Petite Ceinture, Paris, France. Paris's La Petite Ceinture was formerly a busy overland railway line used by passenger and freight trains alike. However, as the Paris Metro and the motorcar gained popularity, this once buzzing railway line fell into disuse. It has remained closed as a railway station since 1934, but now serves as a tranquil stretch of pathway for urban lovers of wildlife and the outdoors. The stretch in the 16th arrondissement between the Porte d'Hôtel and La Meute station was open to the public first, with its graffiti-adorned walls and green-carpeted tracks offering city dwellers a taste of nature. Another section in the 12th arrondissement also serves as an urban nature trail, since the abandoned line is home to more than 250 species of flora and fauna. Access has since been granted to 2 more sections of the deserted rail line. Hutuan, China. A dream location for photographers, the abandoned fishing village of Hutuan is almost entirely carpeted in green. From its narrow passageways to its windowless houses, Hutuan on Shengshan Island was once home to a sizable fishing community, but ultimately the village's remote location made living here a challenge. Hutuan's fishing trade was also threatened by that of bigger cities such as Shanghai, and by the 1990s the village's population had begun to decline. By the 2000s, the final villagers had left, and Hutuan was engulfed by greenery. Now the village is typically the domain of adventurous tourists who wander between the leaf-clad houses, peering through glassless windows and admiring the sea views. Ritely, Nevada, USA. One of the best preserved ghost towns in Nevada, Ritely, perched at the edge of Death Valley, had a very short lifespan. The town was founded in 1904 when quartz was discovered in the area, and the settlement developed at a rapid pace. Homes, shops, a school, a hospital and more all sprang up within a couple of years, and a community was established. However, the 1907 financial crisis shook the town of Ritely and businesses began to suffer. By 1911 the mill was closed, and by 1916 all inhabitants had left and Ritely was deserted. Today the ruins still tell of its old Wild West past. The site is home to the old train depot, the crumbling walls of the former bank building, and the bottle house, which was restored in 1925. Oradour-sur-Glane, France. One of the most heart-wrenching ghost towns in the world, Oradour-sur-Glane was all but destroyed during the Second World War. On 10th of June 1944, German troops stormed the village, murdering 642 people. Now, the French village, which remains almost stuck in time, serves as a searing reminder of this fateful day. While a new village was built up nearby, the original Oradour-sur-Glane has been preserved as a memorial to the victims of the massacre. Corroding cars still dot the roads and weather-worn buildings have crumbled over time. Visitors typically walk around the town in silence, taking in the church with its bullet-ridden altar and the burnt-out shells of homes and shops. An underground museum offers a glimpse into life in Oradour-sur-Glane before the attacks and adds further context to the atrocities. Hôtel Belvedere du Rayon-Vert, Salisbury, France. A curious Art Deco-style property in the southern French commune of Salisbury, Hôtel Belvedere du Rayon-Vert first opened back in 1932. The ship-like hotel was strategically placed adjacent to the railroad in order to gain business from travelling passengers, and it once housed amenities such as a ballroom, casino, and even a tennis court on its rooftop terrace. Business suffered here during the Spanish Civil War, though the Hotel Belvedere du Rayon Vert didn't ultimately close until the 1980s. Now the building, which is listed as a historic monument, once again houses some vacation apartments. Guests who choose to stay at the property typically get a full guided tour that reveals its hidden history. Poggio Reale, Sicily, Italy. In 1968, a string of devastating earthquakes ravaged Sicily, and one of the communities that suffered the most was Poggio Reale, a small town in the island's southwest. The inhabitants fled the village and rebuilt elsewhere, and Poggio Reale was left once again to the whims of Mother Nature. Poggio Reale still stands almost as it was immediately after the earthquakes. The buildings are damaged and crumbling, many without roofs or doors, and rubble still collects in the streets. Visitors can usually freely wander the debris-littered lanes, peering through windows and imagining village life here as it once was. St. Elmo, Colorado, USA. Colorado has little shortage of ghost towns, but this one in the Sawatch Range remains remarkably intact. More than 40 historic buildings are scattered across St. Elmo, which was originally named Forest City when it was founded in 1880. In its heyday, the town had some 2,000 residents who mined for both gold and silver. In the 1920s, business here was in decline, and the closure of the local train service put a final nail in St. Elmo's coffin. By the end of the 1950s, St. Elmo's residents had cleared out, and it was left a ghost town. Tourists are generally free to wander the streets, taking in wood-framed buildings including houses, a blacksmith shop, a schoolhouse, and several stores. There are also a handful of residents dotted around the area. Imber Village, Salisbury, England. In December 1943, during the devastation of the Second World War, the residents of Imber Village were given a matter of weeks' notice to evacuate their homes and move on. The little village in the southwestern country of Wiltshire was to be used as an exercise ground for the US Army, and all residents were forced to leave. The heartbroken villagers did as they were ordered, and Imber served its new purpose. Although the villagers were assured that they would be able to return eventually, that promise was never kept, and Imber Village still remains a military training ground. The haunting site is off-limits to the public most of the time. However, visitors are usually allowed to enter on certain dates each year. During this time, tourists can see buildings such as the 13th century St. Giles Church, the Bell Inn pub, and a 17th century manor house known as Imber Court. Belchite, Spain. The ruined town of Belchite in Spain's Zaragoza province acts as a reminder of the horrors of the Spanish Civil War. The town was almost completely ruined during a bloody battle in 1937 that not only destroyed Belchite, but claimed the lives of thousands of people. Following the battle, Belchite remained abandoned, serving as a poignant war memorial. Now, bullet hole-ridden buildings, some with intricately patterned walls and carvings, still remain. Tourists can generally take to the rubble-strewn streets on guided tours and learn about this devastating slice of Spanish history. Rose Island, Indiana, USA. Rose Island was once a family-friendly theme park, drawing in the crowds with its wooden roller coaster, its Ferris wheel, and its little zoo, whose inhabitants included a black bear. There was also a large swimming pool and even a hotel. But in 1937, the Ohio River flood devastated the park, leaving all of its attractions irreparably damaged. Today, visitors are able to access the site, and information boards help put the park's ruined fragments into context. An overgrown swimming pool, the pillars of the old entryway, and the remnants of an old stone fountain all hide within the woods. It's a desolate reminder of the force of Mother Nature. Banan Castle, New York, USA. This curious island castle was built in the early 1900s for Scottish businessman Francis Bannerman VI. Today, the head-turning ruins still sit on Polypel Island, which is less than a 2-hour drive north of New York City. The building was constructed by Bannerman, who owned a military equipment company, as a means of storing his wares, which included weapons and ammunition. However, such was Bannerman's ambition that the project was never truly finished. Bannerman died in 1918, and a tumultuous string of decades followed. Explosions, fires, and the sinking of the ferry boat that serviced Polypel Island all contributed to the castle's eventual abandonment. Now, the site is typically frequented by tourists who come via ferry and kayak to peer at the overgrown ruins standing sentry beside the water. Kayakoy Turkey. Hemmed in by the Taurus Mountains, Kayakoy is a Turkish ghost town that has been deserted since the 1920s. The town, whose origins stretch back to at least the 14th century, was once home to tens of thousands of Greek Orthodox Christian and Anatolian Muslim citizens. However, the Greco-Turkish War would change the town of Kayakoy forever. The conclusion of the Greco-Turkish War saw the Christian residents of Kayakoy forced to leave their homes for Greece. This population exchange was meant to ensure that both Turkey and Greece each had just one main religion. Then, in 1957, further devastation occurred when an earthquake struck the town, destroying many homes and public buildings. Kayakoy is now crumbling and deserted, and is usually the domain of tourists and guides retelling the town's heart-wrenching history. Big Fish movie set, Alabama, USA. The town of Spectre was built for the 2003 film Big Fish. Directed by Tim Burton, the movie tells the story of Edward Bloom, a dying father who attempts to rebuild his relationship with his estranged son by regaling fantastical stories of his own youth. Forest Hem Spectre, a secret town Bloom discovers in the movie, was constructed from scratch with painstaking detail. The town, which is as enchanting in real life as it is on the big screen, can be found on Jackson Lake Island in Millbrook, Alabama. Visitors typically come to explore the time-worn set, which includes gnarled trees, a pretty church, and a line of decaying homes. There's also a string of shoes strung up above the houses, and even the odd goat wandering Spectre's main street. Krakow, Italy. One of Europe's most breathtaking ghost towns, Krakow is an abandoned village in southern Italy's Basilicata region, with early settlements here thought to date to the 8th century BC. Despite its long history, the stunning cliff-top town has had numerous run-ins with Mother Nature. Floods, landslides and earthquakes have all devastated Krakow throughout the 20th century. The hardy town survived the plague that swept through it in the 17th century and dramatically diminished its population. However, it was the landslides of the 1950s and 1970s that ultimately forced Krakow's citizens to leave for safer places. Now the town is usually accessible via guided tours and also has become a popular filming location. Bodi, California, USA. Time stands still in Bodi, one of America's most famous ghost towns, once home to some 10,000 people. Gold was discovered here by prospectors in 1859, though the population didn't truly explode until the 1870s. In this decade, more and more miners began to descend on the town, and the place developed at a rapid pace. Alongside homes, Bodi also had a high concentration of saloons, gambling houses, and even brothels. This earned the gold rush town a seedy reputation, though that didn't stop miners flooding in from all over the country. As ever, though, this fortune was short-lived. As mines closed, Bodi's population began to dwindle, though the town didn't truly empty until the 1960s. Now the ghost town is protected as the Bodi State Historic Park. The Hills of Eyes gas station, Ouarzazate, Morocco. An American-style gas station is the last thing you'd expect to find in Morocco's desert, but that's exactly what lies in the wilderness less than an hour's drive from the city of Ouarzazate. This spooky gas stop was used as a set for the 2006 horror movie The Hills of Eyes, which sees an American family stalked and attacked by a clan of savage beings who dwell in the desert. The ramshackle remains of the set, beaten down by the desert over time, are almost as eerie as the flick itself. Rustling cars, creaking signs and human-like dolls all come together to create a chilling scene. It's not possible to enter the building itself, but visitors typically still stop to peer through the window. Atlas Corporation Studio Sets, Ouarzazate, Morocco. The Hills of Eyes is far from the only movie filmed out in the Moroccan desert. Atlas Corporation Studios, a film studio built in 1983, has been involved with the production of blockbusters from Gladiator in 2000 to war movie Black Hawk Down 2001, both of which are directed by Ridley Scott. Before the studios were established, 1962's famed Lawrence of Arabia was also filmed in this area. Various tours to Atlas Corporation Studios generally allow visitors to see a whole host of sun-bleached movie sets, which have been abandoned and left to the mercy of the desert. There are remnants from huge blockbusters including Chariots from Ben-Hur 2016 and Egyptian temples used in both Asterix and Obelix Mission Cleopatra 2002 and the Mummy series. That's all for today. These haunting abandoned places where echoes of the past linger and no one resides any longer offer glimpses into history's mysteries and the stories left behind in their silent solitude. Thank you so much for watching.